not necessarily tribal or regional.
Welcome back. If you're just joining us, it's Daybreak on Trust Television, and it is that segment where we bring you major headlines from frontline newspapers in Nigeria this morning. And as usual, we will begin with the Daily Trust. And on the Daily Trust this morning, the major story comes from the events of yesterday, especially the one that has to do with the suspended Central Bank of Nigeria's governor. And the headline reads, Emefiele rearrested over terrorism as CSO's lawyers slammed DSS. With the riders, secret police, prison officers fight over custody. It is a sad day, clash, unfortunate. And ex-CBN governor granted 20 million naira bail. You see the show of force there between the men of the DSS or SSS, whichever one they are called, and of course the officers of the correctional services. And
you can tell from the decorations on his uniform that he's a lot more senior,
absolutely,
compared to the people that are trying to manhandle him,
who have nothing on actually, other than a mask and a Gestapo like operations right there within the premises of the Temple.
You talk about corruption of power. This is a very typical example.
Yeah, you know, if you take this and juxtapose with the president's charge to the heads of
to work together,
to work together, then you begin to wonder what this is exactly, and whether this is. I mean, to think of us as the giant of Africa displaying this crass madness right inside the compound of the court is shameful, to say the least. And to other stories, 48 hours to deadline, Tinubu yet to send ministerial list to Senate. List will reach us within 2 days, the Senate leader, and we will beat deadline presidency. To other stories, petrol hike, price hike, no plan to reduce work days, FG. And CBN increases interest rate to 18.75%, highest in 22 years. And Tinubu meets ousted APC chair Adamu and secretaries. You'll find all of this if you pick up today's copy of the Daily Trust.
All right, let's turn our attention now to the Daily Independent for today. All right, Senate urges federal government to hold proposed electricity tariff hike. Well, you can imagine none of the economic indices is looking good, so I suppose hiking the electricity tariff will further worsen an already bad situation. You can read the thoughts of the Senate on the pages of the Daily Independent. IMF keeps Nigeria's economic growth forecast at 3.2%. Why does it still look positive? Take a look at the story on page 6. Lawyers criticize DSS rearrest of Emefiele despite court order. Say action frustrating highest dent on Tinubu's government. I'll say the jury is out. It's not yet out on that. Yeah, not many people are particularly pleased with that show of shame at the High Court in Lagos. And ask court to penalize DSS, demand obedience to court orders, warn against supplanting the rule of law, and reject arbitrariness. So these are all the thoughts of the lawyers, I suppose, through the Nigerian Bar Association, expressing their discontent about what happened, because the judge was very specific about who was to take custody of Godwin Emefiele. He was to be remanded in the correctional service until he meets his bail conditions. So would he have to now do that at the DSS? Well, time should tell. And you can see the embattled, suspended CBN governor in that picture there, unmistakably, not looking like his usual pomp and sharp self with the suit, arriving at the court premises. We are not unifying foreign exchange rates, according to CBN, says it is gradually withdrawing old naira notes, raises MPR to 18.75%. More on this story on the pages of the Daily Independent. Tinubu to send ministerial list to Senate before Friday. Listen, at this point, we're tired of keeping track. At this point, we're just wondering when his time will elapse.
Because already.
They said, the beginning of the week, they say before Friday. Now, we just have to, it's a guessing game now. When we see it, we see it. Page 7 has, I bet, nothing but speculations for you. So if you're interested, take a look at it. Teachers square up with Benue state government over 27.5% allowance and demotions. PDP says governor not prepared for governance. Also a story you can find on page 7. Looting claim. Oshomole apologizes to senators, insist offices were vandalized. You know how you can say, I'm sorry, but I'm not sorry? This is a typical example. Alleged 1.35 billion naira fraud. Appeal court frees Sule, Lamido, Sons, and others. And lastly, embattled Adamu Omishore meet Tinubu amid APC leadership crisis.
All right, we move on to the Guardian newspaper. The Guardian newspaper is marking its 40th year in operation in the search for truth or conscience nurtured by truth. And they're also staying with development around the Emefiele and the central bank. CBN on a new route to inflation control raises interest rates on banks' deposits. You have pictures there of the squabbles between the DSS and the Correctional Service. DSS clashes with NCOS, rearrest Emefiele despite bail. And to other stories, 15,000 IVF babies delivered in 130 Nigerian clinics since 1989. That's an interesting developments there. And to other stories, fruit ripening with chemicals partly responsible for untimely death. This is coming from NAFDAC. And to other stories, Senate defies ministerial list till Thursday. Urges discos to allow Nigerians breathe. It's not just the discos. I think this government should allow us breathe in general. And joining us now in the studio is our regular analyst, Mr. Ben Shaman, former director of news at the Voice of Nigeria. It's a pleasure to have you join us this morning.
Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you for having me. Always a great pleasure.
Thank you. I was tempted to say you were one of those people I saw at the MPC meeting, but clearly you're not. I mean, starting with what appears to have made all of the newspapers' headline this morning in a way, the squabbles between the DSS and the Correctional Service officers over a clearly defined instruction from the judge asking the Correctional Service to remind Emefiele till his next appearance in November, and then coming out with this Gestapo operation right within the compound of the Temple of Justice. What did you make of all of this drama yesterday?
I think the DSS decided to defile the court. You see, when you said the judge gave an instruction, give it, he gave a judgment. It's a judgment. Let Emefiele be with the facilities of the prison service or correctional service as it is now. But when you fail, you should show that thing you call show of force to a sister agency. All of you trying to make Nigeria better. But this kind of show of force, show of shame, and defiling the court system is just not it at all. And I think that the tops, people at the top, the Correctional Service and the DG, DSS, they should be at the talking point now. This kind of a thing should not happen again. Look at what happened with EFCC in the same Ikoyi. I mean, it shouldn't just be repeated here and there and always. If not, we're just going to be known as people who indeed are involved in this thing, Nigeria Palace, gra. It's just not it.
Isn't this symbolic of the phenomenon of Oga at the top, where you have these big characters who are trying to pretty much usurp the powers of the institution and embody it, and then they give their lieutenants the sense that, listen, I am the law. If I say do this, it doesn't matter what the law actually says, whether it's through the jurisdiction of a court, for instance, because you get the sense that those individuals on their own did not take that decision. They must have gotten a directive from somewhere they feel they're responsible to. So damn what the judge says, and they're going to stick with their official directive, regardless of what the Nigerian law actually says. Don't you think that this impunity has become normalized within institutions like the DSS, for instance? Because this is not the first time they're disrespecting or disregarding a court order.
Now, you see, all those people who enforce the law using the gun, they don't run their offices by passion. You run by commands. I am so commanded to do this. And it is always said, obey your the last command, the last order you are given. So, if Oga says, ensure you take Emefiele with you, DSS, it does not matter who is there. And when you look at the way they are armed, correctional services, you have AK-47, you have few in number. DSS came prepared. Look at their kind of guns. They call them the Uzis. And Uzi is not a small, it's not a joke. It's not a chewing stick. It's not a walking stick. So they came prepared. And that was why, inside the court, outside the court, they had already mounted, they've already drafted. There was an architecture already on how they're going to take this man.
All right, let us try to understand a bit more, and in doing so also provide context around this conversation. This is not largely a question of whether or not Emefiele is guilty of the charges that have been brought about. It's about the sanctity of the third arm of government. A government cannot pretend to be democratic or arrive at the scene using democratic means and then pretend, and then chooses what part of the law to obey. In other words, the laws are not a buffet where you choose what you like,
pick what you want,
and ignore the others. And from the DSS particularly, and that's why I'm raising this question, we seem to be seeing a replay of what has become a familiar mode of modus operandi. Storming the court. Do you have to show up in the courts with those MI-16? Do you have to militarize that place? Does it give the judge a sense of safety? Arriving at the court and seeing that the whole place is completely, gagged with guns, like we are, that like a high-profile terrorist is appearing.
On trial.
Is that what we see in the advanced world? First of all, to start with, and isn't there anything the court can do really? To reclaim its independence. Because in other crimes, you do this, the court will issue a warrant for your arrest as the head of that agency.
The funny thing is, who then gets to arrest him? Because I think there was a time ago when such an arrest was given
on the FCC, the IGP.
Yeah, and then you had this clash where they are also protected. So it's like going to arrest.
Absolutely. So between the courts, that's my question, and the presidency, how do we rein in on what is beginning to appear like an almighty, over-the-roof Department of State Security? Now,
you see, we remember the old debate when we were in secondary school. The pen and the sword, which one is mighty? For the judges, they believe the pen should be so mighty. And that's why they are so mighty by way of word of mouth written on paper. I hereby sentence you to this. Or the court has found you guilty of this. And it stands that way. It's expected that for there to be, a very smooth operation in society, laws must be obeyed. this is civil rule. Even in military, you must also have some seeming elements of democracy. And that is why when they grab power, they say the executive function and the legislative function all are with the military. But in doing all of that, we have to have operations that have human face. So if we begin to defile the court, no, I can use the gun, it is mightier than the pen. See, if you look at the judge, you say, no, that small one, you're already indicting the law itself. The law, see, the court system, the environment, the sitting, once the judge appears, they say, court, it is expected absolute silence. But you cannot, therefore, challenge a system because you feel you can go the rock way.
Right.
And it's just not it.
And I suppose this is one of many of the infractions of the current leadership of the DSS. The Director General has been dragged one too many times by a group of lawyers recently, talked about, instituted a legal suit against him for, defiling court orders, as obviously talking about contempt and things like that. And I think this doubles down on it. But away from the fiasco, let's talk about how this is now obviously appearing to be a witch hunt or a persecution of the suspended governor of the central bank, Mr. Godwin Emefiele. His lawyers were speaking and they said, listen, at the end of the day, all they have against him is an antique gun, a double-barrel gun that does not appear to be anything out of the ordinary. There is nothing substantial against him. Do you think at this point in time it appears that he's a political victim to what is happening with him right now?
Well, I will not rush the way many people rushed when they were talking about that lady with jam, a jikeme smoker. Some people rushed and condemned jam in the end. They had to swallow the humble pie. And I tell you that I remember 1991 or 1990, I was a defense correspondent, and a correspondent was arrested. And so when he was arrested, we protested. So Fred Chijoka arranged, and they said, okay, this is your guy, take him. We hereby set him free. As we were going out of the gate, someone just beckoned at this same journalist and said, come. So when he went there, then he was arrested. Said, no, but you set him free. Say, yes, we set him free because he was a journalist. Now we have arrested him. He is part of the military. We didn't know that the man went on a wall when a red mask come and he became a journalist, and that was how he had two cases, so to speak. What am I trying to drive at? Maybe the DSS, outside the gun matter, there is another thing they are keeping in abeyance. They will not want a kind of a consolidated trial. Maybe, I'm saying maybe, whereby this is court case matter, gun issue matter, you now go into what do you call what happened at the CBN. Is there anything that we are not yet, we don't have knowledge about?
You would think that since he's been in detention for the past, 3-4 weeks?
40 days or more.
Right, they would have something substantial. It does, I'm saying on face value, it does appear that an illegal firearms charge against a central bank governor, it does look ridiculous on face value, isn't it?
Well, you see, if actually he has, all that he would have done, since they said illegal, he would have received a permission to have.
Right.
And that's all.
Right.
If he didn't have, of course, he's guilty of that. And other things that we don't know should probably be, or maybe be, concerning the running of administration, currency, redesign, and so on.
I suppose if it's not obvious now, maybe there is nothing.
One would think,
there's nothing sketchy.
Like I said, maybe the DSS does not want you do consolidation of cases, and they all are thrown away. When you do gun running matter, you move on to another, I'm just thinking aloud.
All right. Just so that we don't take all the time on Emefiele, and to also issue the caveat that this is not in support of Emefiele or what he's saying. We are basically just looking at the issues of the rule of law.
Right.
One would think that you would have carried out your investigations before you pick people so that you can accelerate their appearance before the court and sentence them where they need.
It's a very linear process.
Because this clearly shows that you can't profess to be a Democrat on the one hand and all your actions are undemocratic. I think that's what we are saying to the president.
And that's why sometimes you be careful with lieutenants. What the king didn't say,
the lieutenants are exhibiting, because
lieutenants are exhibiting.
Today we are discussing
you go to see a king, the courtier said the king does not want to see you. Meanwhile, the king does not even know you are around. So it happens sometimes.
Absolutely. And by extension, even though they are not on the papers today, we are also waiting for what the charges will be against Bauer. He has also been in detention for over 40 days.
Exactly.
And this is clearly against the spirit of the spirit of the law. If you've got anything on him, charge him, and let's understand and get done with that process. Moving on to other conversations this morning. It's 48 hours to the 60-day deadline for the presentation of ministerial list. We are tired of speculations. We have seen all kinds of names come and go. I'm sure even the people whose name have been mentioned.
Yes, finally got us disinterested.
Disinterested.
Everybody is getting fatigued, waiting
for
the last supper.
And this is crucial because we want to see the face of the people who drive the kind of change that has been promised. And largely that will come from their pedigree. And it's their pedigree basically that will suggest what we are likely to see. Are they performers in their previous roles? Are we just going to recycle governors who are redundant in the last 8 years simply because they identify with a political activity? What exactly would that mix, that critical mix, look like? What do you make of this endless wait and waiting to the very last day before we get ministerial list?
What do I make of it? There's this thing that ought to be some surprises. When Tinubu, at his acceptance after being sworn in, said he was removing fuel subsidy, now it happened. That was taking every Nigerian by surprise. Ministerial list, he's not taking Nigerian by surprise. Speed, he did that with speed. Ministerial list, Tinubu is not taking Nigeria by speed. Then you're talking of accuracy. When you select a cabinet, you just know that these are people who are, in fact, they know their onions. They know they are brief like the palms of their hand. But when you make it a kind of to look like an amoeba, yes, it is today, no, it is tomorrow, okay, people will speculate. In the end, it's like they are putting the president on a scale. Is he capable? And the more you allow that kind of a thing to linger on, the more, heavy weight will come. You said you are giving this man, no, he was the one who destroyed you in this disease. What about that place? In the end, you are so confused, you don't even know. You can throw in the tower and say, oh yeah, governors, go and bring this. Right. And governors will also go and bring whoever they want.
Do you fear that at this point, this is one particular thing for most people, he has not hit the ground running. And as you did say, on inaugural day, he decided to make the bombshell announcement, removal of fuel subsidy, appointed a handful of people as his personal aide to run the administration so far. But we understand that he does need the Federal Executive Council for certain decisions and for government to run smoothly. What do you think is likely playing out at this moment? Because he's had well over 140-something days to ponder the people he wants in his administration. 3 months after winning the elections and 2 months in after being sworn in as president, it appears that the list is still unfinished.
Yeah, you see, when they started tagging some presidents in Nigeria as Baba Go Slow, you know, Nigerians are so good in forming names and having cliches around and allow us to breathe. He was already talking that way to some agencies. But today, Nigerians, I hope they won't call him the man who is not allowing us to breathe. Because when you allow things to go on this way without being in charge, it says a lot about the persona. Do you have the carrying capacity? Let us not doubt him for now. But again, if you allow leakages here and there, comments to go in here and there, of course, when stakeholders, people, opinion molders begin to tack your administration with some unpalatable adjectives, it's always very hard to come out of that. No matter the spin doctors you will get. Spin doctors will always tell you, Excellency, don't worry. These are people who don't mean well for you. Forget about them. It's not about forget about them.
I think
people who want you to deliver are the ones criticizing and making you think. Those who want you to fail will always bring some dark goggles that you don't see very far. They make you sound so myopic, you don't see more than your nose. So we want a president who indeed will one day, look, when protocol is going this way, you should be able to turn to the left and check and see what is wrong there. Why are they taking me to the other side, not this side? Go and see these things.
All right.
Confirm these things and reconfirm.
All right. Okay. When I see you demonstrate, I get the impression that you have functioned in that role before. Probably we need some masterclass from you. But basically, you're saying the same. With the last administration, when we started complaining, they called us wailing whalers. Whether that is correct or not, it's a different thing. But it turned out that we are not whalers after all. We were pointing at very germane things that we're taking for granted. Today, if the president men are listening, there are some perceptions here and there that suggest that some of the things we have seen that suggested speed and understanding were just flukes, that they didn't know what to do.
Or even the renewal of hope. I mean, I don't think socially, psychologically, Nigerians are feeling it at the moment.
Absolutely not.
Honestly, when I begin to see the dance of the National Assembly, when you see the Senate President wearing the same cap with the President with that number 8,
I'm not sure it's at 8, but okay, I understand what you're
saying. All right. Well, let's just take this.
8 divided by 2. Okay. We're already thinking of next election instead of giving us good governance.
Well, that's another way of looking at it, but I'm not sure. I think he has always won that 8
for a very long time.
For a very long time.
A mission and a vision. Once you have a vision and you march towards that, it's your mission. He has realized it.
All right. I think the point is made that there's so much suffering in the land. We want to see real actions, to deliver this country rather than the promise of it will get better whilst people are dying. Finally, Governor Oshomole, or former governor, or Senator Oshomole, whichever one is appropriate. In the eye of the storm again. 1 minute is accusing members of the Senate.
The next minute he's taking it back, but also not taking it back at the same time.
And then the minute after, he's in some committee of the federal government negotiating with Labour and asking them to take positions he would not have taken when he was Labour chairman, and saying things he would not have also done when he was governor. What is this metamorphosis about Senator Oshomole?
You see, honestly, he's a man of too many colors, many sizes too. At the point he was vibrating as a Labour leader, you always believe on Oshomole. No, we can do without the government. They went and bought Labour buses. Where are these Labour buses today? Now, when Tinubu came on board and he had announced this subsidy stoppage, of course, Labour said they were moving. And what did they do? They went and a kind of wood TUC, Trade Union Congress. You could see Labour was standing aloof. Oshomole went there. He was part of the negotiation. When Dele Alake, the spokesperson for the president, was talking, you could see Oshomole still vibrating behind him. And each time Alake was almost stammering, Oshomole would he became the prompter, like a television, he'll just whisper something, then Alake will pick up from there. So you could see that Oshomole, in this crisis, he has to take care. And sometimes, do I call it the flippancy of a Labour leader at the point? I'm sorry with that. You see, when you said former senators, the 9th Senate, they carted, they looted what belonged to government, so to speak. But again, some people are saying, Each time you have them 4 years and you are going, there's always the severance allowance they're supposed to have. If you are going away with these items, we're going to value them
and deduct
from there. You know, so
they're not doing anything wrong or illegal.
Yeah, they didn't do. I think so. They didn't do. I'm saying I think so, because some probably cutted away the things. But in doing all of these,
a senator of the Federal Republic stealing television sets or chairs.
I think these people who have been given how much those.
But we have to start asking the same question of former governors who also left with vehicles belonging to.
You see the situation with Zamfara, with the situation with Benue.
Yeah,
it's all right. It's a very unfortunate.
It's something we will continue to beam our satellite around.
Exactly. And when we say hello chambers, hallowed be thy name, hallowed chambers. It's a place we revere.
Absolutely.
So when we shouldn't turn it into a kind of a place we can deride.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Ben Sharman, former Director of News, Voice of Nigeria, for those insightful perspective on the issues that made the front pages today.